Hey, folks, welcome to Moment of Clarity. Thanks for joining me, you amazing souls. I have one hell of a show for you today. We're going to get into the revelations about the CIA's secret toolbox that they use to create what are called color revolutions around the world, US backed coups against regimes that we don't like because, they did something horrible like give their people health care or something. When you have a country doing that kind of thing, you can't just let it go on. Okay, you got to stand up and find a way to turn that into a failed state so that everyone knows that healthcare is dangerous. Okay, that's what that's what the U.S. needs to do. But there are incredibly important revelations on what the toolbox is that the CIA has been using to create what are called color revolutions. So we're going to get into that, but we're also going to get into the latest revelations about Bill Gates and Jeffrey Epstein, including something that you may not have heard or may not remember from a year ago, the utterly bizarre interview that Bill Gates gave a year ago. And people now that we have new revelations about him, it brings that interview into new light. Let's just say, I feel like today's news about Bill Gates should be played back to back with key moments from that interview in order to really understand what's going on here. But so yeah, what we do and all that, I'm also getting into how local news is being destroyed and much more. We'll see how much we have time for, but thank you all for being here. Please click subscribe, click share. Someone has asked me to put the Rumble link into the comment thread, so I will be doing that as well. Thanks for joining me on Rumble as well. But all right, let's begin with these latest revelations about the CIA's toolbox, what it is that they use to create these color revolutions, which you've probably heard of, but I'll be explaining them more in a moment. But this coming from, so this is the Orinoco Tribune, but they are quoting from a study that has come out from a couple of organizations in China. And I know you are welcome. You are certainly in your rights to go, wait a second, something came from China. It must be false, fake news. You're welcome to do that. But everything I've learned about the CIA, about color revolutions, about what they've been involved in, it all jives with what is coming out from this report. So, if you want to think that there's never been any truth revealed from a country with 1.4 billion people, then be my guest. But I happen to think that this is absolutely accurate. This new report unveils how CIA schemes color revolutions around the world. According to the report, since the beginning of the 21st century, the rapid development of the internet offered a new opportunity. Everything that comes along the CIA is like, that's an opportunity for us to screw with some people. That's an opportunity for us to really destroy someone's country. That's an opportunity, is what that is. They never see anything and they say, you know what? Let's just leave that alone. Let's just let that be. New opportunity for CIA's infiltration activities in other countries and regions. Any institutions or individuals from anywhere in the world that use U.S. digital equipment or software could be turned into the CIA's puppet agent. And this is why the U.S., part of the reason the U.S. has been working so hard over the past 20 to 30 years, 30 years, to make it so that we dominate the digital tools, the digital software around the world, so that the CIA and other U.S. entities could put backdoors into all of these various types of software and use it to their own means. The CIA has overthrown or attempted to overthrow at least 50 legitimate governments abroad. That really is a undercount, I feel, but the CIA has admitted to 7 of those 50. We'll admit to 7 out of 50 fucking the coups we've created in people's governments, causing turmoil in related countries, whether it is the color revolution in Ukraine in 2014, I believe. And the reason these are called color revolutions is because they legit have a color associated with them. I believe the U.S. backed Maidan coup in Ukraine was orange. And you may ask, why is it, what does the color have to do with anything? Well, because the CIA and other people who specialize in creating coups have realized apparently that psychologically it's a lot easier to organize people if you have a special color connected to it. So we are monkeys, and and we're like, I follow the green thing. And sure enough, in many ways, our simple brains rule out a lot of the time. So the CIA is also, ape-brained morons that they want to destroy everything. Their basic motto for the world is Hulk smash. So yeah, they're idiots in their own way, but they have discovered that it's easier to unite people. It's easier to get people to understand a revolutionary group if you have a special T-shirts that you can wear. We're in the mauve team. I want to see a mauve revolution. I want to see a. We're in the. Are you guys eggshell? It's conch, okay? It's not eggshell. Jesus. We're not the eggshell revolution. It's conch is the color. It's burnt sienna. Okay, don't call me eggshell, asshole. Anyway, whether it's color revolutions in Ukraine 2014, the sunflower revolution in Taiwan Island that they attempted, the saffron revolution that they attempted in Myanmar in 2007. The Green Revolution that they attempted in Iran in 2009. Don't know if you guys remember that one. But with all of these, and you probably understand this by now, with all of these, it doesn't mean that the no one genuine is there. It doesn't mean there's not a seed of truth to wanting to more freedoms in these areas. It doesn't mean there's not, in Iran, the various attempting. Someone in the Robin in the chat has a good term that should be thrown around: astroturfing, fake grassroots. The revolutions that are thrown around in these areas, there is often some basis to start them. But then the U.S. throws in tons of money. We throw in our special colors. We throw in, and I'm about to get into the other tools they use, and they co-opt a revolution. So in Iran, it's like, yeah, there are complaints about the government. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's also a lot the government can't do for the people, partially because of the economic war that we have on Iran. So people are suffering. And when people are suffering, they often look to their government and go, hey, idiots, why the fuck are we suffering over here? So there's a genuine aspect to that. At the same time, a lot of it is due to U.S. sanctions, U.S. economic war. So I think people need to understand it can be both. Okay. Nuance is there. Nuance is important. It can be both. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. Not really. No, we can't, because we like colors. The first, so this is continued from the article of the various tools that the CIA uses, according to this in-depth report, digital tools. The first tool that they use is to provide encrypted network communication services in order to help protesters in some countries in the Middle East keep in touch and avoid being tracked and arrested. An American company, which reportedly has a U.S. military background, developed Tor technology, T-O-R, that can stealthily access the internet, the onion router technology. Now, many of you have probably used Tor at some point. And with several of these tools, it doesn't mean that they can't create some good. Like Tor has been used in the United States in a lot of positive ways. But the CIA and the U.S. feels that if they can largely control these various applications, have backdoors into them, they can generally stop them from being used as effectively in the United States. A lot of the encrypted stuff I'm about to talk about, they have the ability to stop its aggressive use in the United States. So they give it to other countries and say, hey, go coup your government, have fun with that. And then when we try and use it in the United States so that our stuff is encrypted, they often have backdoors into it. They often have ways to just shut it down. I mean, for example, just to give my own example, it's like in other countries, some countries don't allow YouTube, or they won't allow YouTube from other countries or things like that. Now, you can get around this with VPNs. One of these is in China, which this is a Chinese report, I believe, initially. But in China, yeah, YouTube and all the US software is largely banned. YouTube, Google, Gmail, all that. However, pretty much everyone gets around it with VPNs. Okay, so there's ways to get around it. VPNs use, but in the US, because YouTube is a US corporation, they ultimately just banned my entire YouTube page. So they didn't have to wait around to see which tool is he using to get online. They just banned the entire page. So they have their own ways to stop revolutions or revolutionary ideas or revolutionary change in the US while facilitating it in countries they want to harm. So it's not that I'm opposed to encryption. I support encryption. I support people being able to communicate. I support people being able to communicate without their government always watching them. I support all of that. But the US is using it in such a way that they're like, hey, we created the software, usually. We can then give it to people to get around their governments. And if they ever try and use it here, we'll fuck their shit up. So it's like a gun. A gun can be used in a positive way. A gun can be used in a negative way. The U.S. has tons of guns, and the U.S. ships them to the people they want to harm other people. So the servers encrypt all information that flows through them to help certain users surf the web anonymously. After the project was launched by American companies, it was immediately provided free of charge to anti-government elements in Iran, Tunisia, Egypt, and other countries and regions to ensure that those young dissidents who want to shake their own government's rule can avoid the scrutiny of the government. But they don't ship this technology, or they have ways around it in countries, often horrible countries, that the U.S. supports, like Saudi Arabia, right? So, in Ukraine. So the U.S. does not provide this technology, or provides ways around this technology to the countries that we want to support, no matter how despotic or horrific. Bolsonaro's Brazil, back when he was in power, is another example. The second method is to provide offline communication services. For example, in order to ensure that anti-government personnel in Tunisia, Egypt, and other countries can still keep in touch with the outside world when the internet is disconnected. Google and Twitter quickly launched a special service called Speak to Tweet, which allows users to dial and upload voice notes for free. But there's a key aspect to this that just goes beyond getting the tweet out there. So like in some of these revolutions or revolutionary attempts or whatever, coup attempts in these countries, the country would then shut down Twitter. They're saying that the CIA and the US government would offer ways around the shutdown of Twitter in that country. But here in the US, if you're speaking revolutionary ideas, like say, my account or many others, getting it on Twitter is not the problem. The problem is that we're crazy shadow banned. We've been banned by the actual entity. Whereas in these other countries, let's say it's in Iran, when they use this thing to get around a block on Twitter so that they can still tweet, Twitter does the opposite with their accounts as it does with my accounts. Rather than shadow banning, it promotes it. It says to everyone, hey, look at this. Look at these people being abused in Iran. Oh, my God. Oh, dear God. So, again, this has to do with the fact that the U.S. owns, it's kind of like owning the means of production, right? You guys know how good old Marx talked about. When you own the means of production, you can exploit the workers because they don't have a way to create the production. Well, it's similar with these digital tools. It's not the means of production, right? It's the outlets of information, the means of spreading information. If you own the means of spreading information, which corporate America owns most of them, then you can shut them down when you want to, facilitate them when you want to, grow revolutions when you want to, decrease them when you want to. And this actually shows why TikTok was quite threatening, or maybe continues to be. I don't know what point it stands right now, why the U.S. is forcing TikTok to be sold to a U.S. entity, is because TikTok was an incredibly large platform for getting out information. I myself never used it much, and because I'm one of these, I'm one of these guys who's not old by a lot of people's estimation, but when you bring a new social media platform where everybody twerks during every video, then I suddenly feel and look very old. My twerking is just not up to par. I'll be honest. I've been working. I've been twerking on my twerking, but it just isn't. I don't feel like it's ready for prime time, so I'm holding out. I'm waiting to get up to at least AAA levels before I release the twerking moment of clarity. But anyway, so TikTok is threatening in that way. The U.S. doesn't own the means of distribution of information when it comes to TikTok. All right, continuing on. The third method is to provide on-site command tools for rallies and parades based on the internet and wireless communications. Oh, I forgot to say that another way the U.S. shuts it down is when I was down at Occupy and various other protests. In a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them, they have ways of shutting down or heavily slowing all communication. Even Black Lives Matter. Even when I was down at Black Lives Matter protests near the White House, no one could get online. No one could. You could live stream if you were like a half mile away, but then you get nearby anything that's happening, and all of a sudden the live stream just shuts down or whatever. And so they have jamming tools that they can use on protests. So it's kind of the polar opposite of what this report is talking about. This report is talking about how the CIA and the U.S. government releases tools to people to create coups in various countries, to create these faux color revolutions. But in the U.S., they have ways of stopping that. They have the opposite. They have the ways of jamming these tools. And of course, then there's the shadow banning as well. It doesn't matter if I'm live streaming to my giant Facebook audiences if my Facebook has been heavily shadow banned. So it's like, how many see it? Okay, well, you're streaming to 300,000 people, but 12 are actually noticing it. Okay, so as I was saying, the third method is to provide on-site command tools for rallies and parades based on the internet and wireless communications. The report noted that the U.S. RAND Corporation spent several years developing a non-traditional regime change technology called swarming. The fourth American development software is called Riot. The software supports 100% independent broadband network, again, to get around any sort of government monitoring. The last tool is the Anti-Censorship Information System. The U.S. State Department regards the research and development of the system as an important task and has injected more than $30 million into the project. The National Computer Virus Emergence Response Center and 360 Company, those are the two companies that put out this report, have spotted Trojan horse programs on plugins related to the CIA in recent cyber attacks targeting China. Big surprise the CIA would be targeting China, even though, again, and this goes for Russia, well, at least it did maybe until the invasion, until the proxy war in Ukraine. We're not technically at war. We're not technically at war with Russia. We're certainly not at war with China. There's been no war declared against these countries, and yet you have the CIA and other entities basically at war with these countries, either economically or digitally. So it's like, yeah, they're not firing the bullets yet. They're not IRL shooting metal at people, shooting exploding things at people's gonads. However, they're basically at war. I mean, I guess that's what we kind of call Cold War, but when the term Cold War was first used, we didn't have all these digital tools. So we didn't, Cold War meant basically just you aren't using guns. But back then there were a lot of there were a lot fewer options of things to use. So basically we are at digital war against China. We're at digital war against Russia. We're at economic war against Russia. We're at economic war against China. And in many ways, those things can be phenomenally harmful. They do kill people. Economic wars kill hundreds of thousands. And the U.S. has 30-some countries on our list of economic war right now. Right now. Most countries have zero. Most countries in this world right now are not, they're like, yeah, well, let's not be at war against anyone. Meanwhile, the U.S. has 30 on that list. It's just, we are such belligerent assholes. It's an infinite war state of killing and death and destruction. There's no positive to the U.S. empire. There's no building. There's no growing. There's no how do we help people. All of that, if they ever talk about that, it's horseshit. It's the Christmas wreath on the pedophile's home, just there to make you think it's all right. Make you think nothing's going on in the basement. Aside from the 5 methods the CIA has used to incite unrest globally through further technical analysis, the report also identified another 9 methods used by the CIA as weapons for cyber attacks, including attack module delivery, remote control, information collection and stealing, and third-party open source tools. All right, I'm going to move on from this topic, but this shows how extreme, I mean, how thorough the digital wars are that are going on right now. And it's barely talked about. I mean, it's certainly not talked about in U.S. mainstream media. But it's just yet another way that we are actively, aggressively trying to harm the world, trying to create destruction in various ways around the world. All right, I want to get to this amazing video. And I have multiple videos to show you. All of them are going to have your jaws on the floor. But this one is from Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, former chief of staff to Colin Powell. Now, you might have heard this guy before. I think he's had a bit of come to Jesus moment, as they call it. I don't think he was ever kind of all in for the empire, even when he was under Colin Powell. But and apparently, I think either he quit over the whole weapons of mass destruction thing, or he was voicing heavy opposition to going in front of the UN and giving the Colin Powell speech that there's weapons of mass destruction. Apparently, Colin Powell also had his qualms, but Colin Powell was no saint. Okay, if you read Colin Powell's whole history going back to Vietnam, he was a full-on stooge of the empire. So it's not like he was some saint who didn't realize the wrong he was doing. But anyway, Wilkerson has been really aggressively kind of forthright and accurate on a lot of things in recent years. And I'm sure the U.S. ruling elite really do not like this guy. But anyway, he's talking mainly about Ukraine in these videos. By the way, make sure you hit subscribe. And no matter which platform you're watching on, well, I don't think Rumble has a bell icon, but if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you click the bell. Even if you're already subscribed, go down and make sure you have also clicked the bell to be alerted about my videos. I don't understand the point of subscribing if you're not getting any alerts, which was this big, fucking 180 that YouTube pulled. You spend years building up your subscriber base, and then they go, now we're adding a new step, and everyone you've gotten to subscribe will no longer be alerted to your videos. Anyway, so click the bell icon, and in about 20 more minutes, this will go to just rumble.com/Lee Camp. But this next story we're doing right here on all the platforms. And I'll also continue to stream at leecamp.net, which is my community, my locals page where we all hang out. We share stories. You can post your own stories, all of that at leecamp.net. But okay, so here he is. We have been. Hold on. This is Lawrence Wilkerson, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, former chief aide to Colin Powell, who has really turned against the empire. Anyway, and I'm going to try and play almost all of these videos. I think it's like 6 minutes of videos. I'm going to play all of them, but I'll come close because it's all really important.
Warfare state since 9/11. And arguably, we've been a warfare state for longer than that. Certainly because of the Cold War, but also we did some extraneous things to the Cold War. It appears to the rest of the world now. And Ukraine is amplifying and making this far more profound. And when I say the rest of the world, I'm talking about polls that indicate 3 billion people think we're insane. They truly think we're insane. They express it in different ways. They express it.
I love that. They think fully think we're insane, and they're not wrong. They're not wrong that the U.S. is fucking insane, out of our minds, psychotic, racing towards nuclear war. And when he says 3 billion people, that's not quite the 80%, because I guess 3 billion, so that's, less than half of the world. But those are the ones that think, oh, the U.S. is one poll shows the U.S. is the number one threat to peace around the world. But 80% of the world is living in countries that either did not sign on to U.S. sanctions or are actually actively supporting Russia in the proxy war. Meaning 80% of this world is living in countries, is of the population that does not support the proxy war in one way or another. 80% of the world. So while we live in this bubble in the United States, if you're in the United States, and you probably know what I'm talking about, we live in this bubble where we think, if you turn on CNN or you turn on, PBS or you turn on MSNBC, all these channels, you turn them on and you think that the world has declared that Russia's just 100% wrong. Why the fuck did they do this? They did it out of the blue. Who knows what happened? Putin woke up with wild hair up his ass, and now we've got World War III. Who knows what happened? Putin stubbed his toe, and now we're all screwed. That's what they make you think is going on here. When in fact, most of the world, I'm not saying they support the invasion. A lot of people don't. But they also don't support the U.S. sanctions. They also don't support the stuff the U.S. did to lead to this proxy war. So 80% of this world agrees with you and me on this thing. And 20% of this world is even in countries that support these sanctions, and which doesn't mean that every person supports the sanctions. Obviously, I'm in a country that supports this sanction and this proxy war. Anyway, let's continue.
For example, by being on Putin's side, if you will, even though for them, looking at it from their distant vista, it's aggression on his part. It's crossing international borders without permission, and that's a war crime. Same way we did in Iraq. We committed a war crime in 2003 in Iraq. You could argue Article 51, self-defense under the UN Charter for Afghanistan, but you couldn't argue it for the 20 plus years we stayed in Afghanistan. So if there's a war criminal in the world of imperial posture, it's the United States of America.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a lot of you are watching this and you're just going, oh yeah, of course, the U.S. is a war criminal. Of course. I know you're yelling, of course, but it's important to see it from people that were in or are in the U.S. ruling elite. This guy was one of them. And so to see it said by those folks that are breaking ranks from the rest of the ruling elite in this country is so important. And it shows how the storyline is falling apart. The thread is unraveling. They cannot hold together this garbage, this propaganda, this bullshit very much longer. And yet they're trying. They're trying.
But still, this business of 3 billion plus people, incidentally, most of those are under some kind of direct or indirect U.S. sanction too. So think about that for a minute. The official list at the Treasury Department is over 32 countries that we have under sanction right now. And the official list does not encompass all of the sanctions, I'll guarantee you. So the rest of the world, particularly people under 35 in poll after poll, show that they believe the United States might, in fact, be the greatest threat to their future. That is a terrible place for a country that professes to be a democracy, indeed a leader in human rights, rule of law, and such, to be in. It's a terrible place.
Yeah, exactly. It shows that we are a late stage empire. That shows that things are not stable. When you are in a good place as an empire, then you might be throwing out all that bullshit. We believe in human rights. We believe in taking care of your neighbor. We believe in helping that free speech and free religion. We all those things. When you're in a good place as an empire, you say those things and people believe you. And people go, oh, they stand for human rights and democracy. And favorite color is orange. You know, people believe it, but people don't believe it anymore. People don't. This is what a late stage empire looks like. We're crumbling under debt, trillions and trillions of dollars of debt. The only reason we're so-called rich anymore is because we print our own dollars, so we just keep fucking printing them. We increased the monetary supply by 20% during the pandemic alone. So it's like there's not a lot there. There's not a lot there left in the empire. And now you have people like Wilkerson, former ruling elite, who are coming out against these lies, this bullshit. And I want to show you a little more of what he had to say because, he had to say because it really is good, important. I might skip around a little on this one, but.
And the history of this conflict is as damning of the empire, us, NATO, London, Paris, Berlin, Washington, as it is of Vladimir Putin. He's the one who aggressed across borders, but still he was provoked. He was massively provoked. The history of this is a history of perfidy, of deceit and lying by everyone from Angela Merkel to the president of the United States, times 2 or 3. We have been playing with Ukraine for a long time. The CIA has been in Ukraine for a long time, doing dastardly things, doing things that were they revealed to the light of the international community would plunge us even further in polling.
And a lot of this, although the details of what the CIA has done in Ukraine are not widely known, but a lot of this information about our activity in Ukraine has been widely known. Like John McCain, I've never seen a war I didn't love until he died. You know, that was really shitty of him to die because I was hoping to see him go to prison one day. And what a cheap way to get out of prison. McCain! But anyway, when he was still here in 2013, he and I think Lindsey Graham, they have videos up meeting with the Azov battalion, the neo-Nazis, saying we're going to give you all the support you could ever need. This is years before Russia invaded. Years. You have U.S. officials, state officials, standing there with Ukrainian military saying, we're going to give you everything you need to fight Russia. Whereas we're supposed to be separate from Ukraine. We're not supposed to be funding and arming the Nazis in Ukraine. We're supposed to be our own thing. But all right. When the stuttering outdoes the words, then it's time to move on.
It's not all Putin's fault, is what I'm saying. The aggression, yes. Okay, the aggression, yes. Just like the aggression in 2003. But there are other things that happened that caused Putin to do what he did. All of that notwithstanding, it needs to stop yesterday. We do not need more of this conflict in the heart of Europe. This is worse than the Balkans, and the Balkans were pretty bad. This is worse than Kosovo, and it was pretty bad. This is in the heart.
It is funny seeing someone say these things while looking like you're a high school like geometry teacher. It's like he's talking about essentially pushing on the brink of nuclear war, and he's like, this stuff needs to stop yesterday. Okay, it needs to class. If I find any of you funding and arming Nazis, not in my class. Okay, not in my class. He just seems so calm. I'm impressed. I guess I'm impressed with anybody who's calm in the wake of our goddamn world right now.
Part of Europe, this is a place that is the breadbasket increasingly of much of the world. Lebanon, for example, was getting about 50, 51, 52% of its grain products from Ukraine and from Russia. That's been disturbed majorly now. North Africa was getting similar amounts. So we have really disturbed the world with regard to this conflict. It needs to stop. The outlines of how it should stop are very clear now. We don't need one of the world's premier diplomats, Wang Yi, a man whom I met first in July of 2000.
All right, I can skip this part because he's just bragging about who he knows. But his point is just that you don't need premier diplomats right now. Just stop it. Just stop it.
Works for China. You can say, incidentally, he works for Xi Jinping.
Yeah, I think in this clip he doesn't say anything else other than talking about who he knows.
You can't do that.
Yeah, I know. Right there, he was saying like something about Colin Powell being on the phone too much or something like. I don't. He's a name dropper, but sometimes you got to drop some names.
Only problem we're going to have if we continue this stalemate is Lockheed is going to get a lot richer. Their profits are obscene right now. And Raytheon and Grumman, their profits are obscene. And let me assure you, those profits aren't going to the floor workers. They're going to the CEOs and COOs and CFOs and vice presidents.
I do always love, I'm glad, as I made clear earlier, I'm very glad he's speaking up, but I do always love when these people discover this stuff in like their 70s. They're like, there's people getting rich off the wars that we made, especially when they were involved in it. He was Colin Powell's chief of staff back in the day. I always love it's like, or even Tucker Carlson. There was a video of Tucker Carlson, not on his show, like a small interview where he's like, I realized after 30 years in the media that it's not serving the people. It's like, what? How did it take you that long? How did it? Fuck that. It's like, yeah, I feel like it took me a long time, and I woke up when I was 26. Okay? Really, really woke up. I woke up that the Iraq war was insane on day one, but I still thought that the two-party system mattered. And so all that bullshit. So I woke up out of that by 26 or whatever. And it's like, how were you were in cover, you were in the room watching these idiots. And you thought, I don't think our wars done by the U.S. are helping the peoples. And I think that at least the second half of the 20 years of bombing the shit out of Afghanistan was not done for the benefit of the children. I'm always amazed. It's like, how did it take that long? But that being said, I am glad he's picking out. So I should stop criticizing the man. But something else I want to say, which he's about to say, and I'll let you see that. But is that first he's talking about the profits. There is obscene profits in this proxy war, right? Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, all the weapons manufacturers. The problem with that, thinking that's the cause of this proxy war, is there's a lot of left-wing leftists who seem to think that's why we're in this proxy war, is that weapons contractors make a lot of money. That's not the real reason we're in this proxy war. Sure, it's a nice benefit. The U.S. knows it always needs to be at war in order to keep, like a sixth of the economy going or whatever amount is in these weapons and weapon contractors, et cetera, and the military, et cetera. But that's not the real cause of the proxy war in Ukraine. We could bomb islands somewhere and achieve that. It's as I've talked about a lot, it has to do with the waning power of the petrodollar, the splitting of the world's economies, and mainly trying to shut off Russia from coordinating with Europe and to put Europe back into a vassal system beneath the United States. And sure enough, luckily, he says that as well coming up in this clip.
It's obscene, the money they're making. They're beating ExxonMobil now, and that is a sin. That's a cardinal sin, all this money. And that's one of the reasons we're there. We're there because all these people are making money and we're taking no blood. They're making money and we're taking no blood. And also, we're there to reestablish our hegemony over the European Union, which was matching us in annual GDP, $22-23 trillion, and has now 740 million citizens. We don't want them to grow up and become independent of us. So we're using Ukraine to reestablish our hegemony over them. Germany is the one we're leading with, and Germany just had polls that show 62% of the German people want this conflict over now. Not only that, Germany's energy costs now, since we took out Nord Stream, Germany's energy costs are 9 to 10 times greater than they were when they were getting Russian gas. And Russian gas was far cleaner than the dirty frack gas they're now getting from the Permian Basin.
So another key moment in these videos is you have former heads of U.S. state. This guy was the top of Colin Powell's group. He had a lot of other positions in government. You have former heads of the U.S. ruling elite admitting that the U.S. took out the Nord Stream pipeline. And it's good to see this. But yet again, this is the type of thing where many of us have been talking about it for months, ever since Seymour Hersh reported it. Many of us said it was likely the U.S. to begin with, even before the Seymour Hersh bombshell article. But yet again, this stuff, many of us in the independent media who are suppressed, or at minimum left out of the mainstream media, would never be allowed on the mainstream media. Many of us say these things, and it's called crazy for several months until it's ultimately admitted. We're seeing this with Russiagate. We're seeing this with the Hunter Biden laptop story. We're seeing this with the U.S. Proxy war history of Ukraine and the history of NATO. We're seeing this with the Cuban audio cricket attacks on the U.S., which the CIA has now admitted were not a Cuban weapon, special acoustic weapon that gave mild headaches to diplomats. You see this with so many things. I'm sure you guys can think of dozens that I've left out, but where it's Epstein is another one, right? Which I'm about to talk more about that. It happens again and again and again and again, where we are out front revealing these things, saying either no one's talking about it, or they're getting it wrong, or they're getting it wrong intentionally. And then, and we are suppressed, we're attacked. And then we see the truth and it's revealed, and the mainstream media ignores it, like they're doing with everything that's come out about Russiagate just in the past 2 months, as they're doing with the Twitter files that have revealed how fake all this stuff was. They leave all their articles up. You can go up and you can look right now and find all the CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, whatever articles about how real Russiagate is. And as it's all falling apart, they leave it all there. They don't post a retraction. They don't give you an I'm sorry. And it should let everyone know to stop watching those networks and to move on. But that's how powerful propaganda is, when it's just wallpapers the world, when it's on every screen, every moment, every audio wave is filled with it. People just believe it anyway.
In Texas. So Germany's not going to take this much longer. But we're going to wind up severing the transatlantic link and destroying NATO. I'm not so sure I wouldn't be in favor of that. But that's going to be the end result of this if we're not careful, because we're alienating our own most powerful allies in this process. Let it go on another year or two to make Lockheed a few more trillion, and we'll have alienated the Europeans considerably more. So it needs to stop immediately.
All right, so there you go. Lawrence Wilkerson admitting all of these things that I and many others have been saying for months and months and months. It is kind of ironic, though, that he's saying, this is harming the U.S. empire. This is severing ties between, although it has succeeded in pushing Europe back into a vassal state system beneath the United States, it also seems to be pushing towards a more severing of ties by various factions in Europe, severing of ties by, of course, China, but severing of ties by many other countries, India, Pakistan, Brazil. Slow. I don't mean they're cutting all ties, but I mean they're moving away from the petrodollar, from the U.S., which harms the U.S. empire, which is the reason people as horrific and disgusting and just Lucifer's asshole level like Kissinger have also said that this proxy war in Ukraine needs to end immediately because they realize it's harmful to the U.S. empire. Now, here's the thing. I might actually support something that decreases the power the power by the U.S. empire, the harm done by the U.S. empire. I might actually support such a thing, except that I'm anti-war. So I don't want to see all the people of Ukraine turned into either grave sites or refugees. I don't want to see that in order for me to, get what I want, the decrease in U.S. empire control. I also don't, there's immense harm in myriad ways that war causes, not just to humans, but environmentally. Also, it pushes towards nuclear war, in which case we all, I'd say suffer. I'm going, because nuclear war, I feel like when you're on fire and you're kissing your genitals goodbye, I feel like that's a bad day. I'm going to go bad day on that one. So anyway, in case you needed to hear it from someone who held a higher government position than I ever have, everything I've been saying about the Ukraine proxy war is true, continues to be true. And now we're getting it from more and more former ruling elite, for lack of a better term, former ruling class, former deep state, etc. Okay, I want to move on to this incredible story about more news about Bill Gates, Jeffrey Epstein. Some of this, portions of this, are even covered by the mainstream media. Not like wall to wall. They're not acting like it's WMD in Iraq or something, but there are articles about Bill Gates and Epstein. And so I'm going to get into all that right now at rumble.com/Lee Camp. It is free to watch over there. I'll give you the link one more time if you're not watching it. If you are watching it, everything stays exactly the same. You can also watch at leecamp.net, my locals page. That will stay exactly the same. But I have to show you this. I also have to show you snippets of an interview Bill Gates gave over a year ago that is honestly jaw-dropping. So please join me over at rumble.com/Lee Camp. By the way, if you join up at leecamp.net, you will get my new ebook, Dangerous Ideas, for free if you become a member at leecamp.net. Dangerous Ideas, my new book, my new ebook. And the only way to get it, right now it doesn't exist anywhere except if you become a member at leecamp.net. Okay, so here's the news. But I'm going to reveal more than just this.